I'm Dr. Anna Ploszajski. I'm a materials scientist, which means that I'm interested in all sorts of different materials that we build our world with: metals, plastics, ceramics, even natural materials like wood and wool. And what material scientists do is they zoom in and have a look at what atoms are up to inside materials, so the very tiniest building blocks of matter. When I was 16 years old at school and starting to decide what I might want to do with my life, there were two real options available to me. One was going to study material science at university, and the other was going to music college to become a professional trumpet player. I decided to go down the scientific route, but I never lost my love of music. And now as a scientist, it's a great joy to be able to bring those sorts of passions together in order to discover the physics of music. Allow me to demonstrate. A trumpet, at its most basic, is just a long tube, and I've got a hose pipe here to demonstrate. When you start to play a note in a trumpet, what you're doing is you're vibrating the air inside. And you start that vibration going from the lips by going like this, into a special piece called a mouthpiece. And that vibration begins the air inside the trumpet moving. And you can create a pretty basic trumpet out of a mouthpiece and a tube. It even sounds kind of trumpety at that point. Now the shape of the trumpet at this point is just a very straight, long tube. But if we put a plastic funnel in the end, it starts to sound even more trumpety. And we can even play different notes on this very basic instrument. To explain how that happens, I'm going to turn to fire. So I brought you over to the theatre to show you my Rubens tube. I made this tube myself from a long copper pipe. I drilled a series of holes along the top, fitted a gas connector to that end and a flexible rubber membrane to this end. And the Rubens tube is an experiment that should show us the shape of the sound waves that are coming out of my trumpet. When I blow down the end of my trumpet, this mouthpiece starts a vibration, and that vibration travels down all the air inside the trumpet. It sets up a sound wave, if you like, inside the instrument, and that sound wave is made up of areas of high and low air pressure. And the more sections of high and low air pressure you have, the higher the pitch of the note that will come out of the end of the instrument. In other words, the higher the frequency of the sound. It can be a bit difficult to imagine areas of high and low air pressure inside an opaque object like a trumpet, so that's where the Rubens tube comes in. Because when I put the end of my trumpet against this rubber membrane, it transfers the sound wave into this rubber membrane, and that rubber membrane transfers it into the propane, which is going to mimic what's happening inside the trumpet. Right, let's give it a go. So what I'm going to do first is play a few relatively low pitches of note. The higher the pitch of the note that I play, the more you will be able to see these waves appearing, and you'll see that there are more and more of them as I go higher and higher up. So if the important thing is the air vibrating inside the tube, then maybe it doesn't really matter what the tube itself is actually made of. Let's see how far we can push this idea. What I'm going to show you is a series of trumpets made of different materials. Now the original one is this. This is just made out of a very thin brass material. And listen to what it sounds like. A concrete trumpet. This has been cast in exactly the same shape as that other one. And see if you can hear the difference. a chocolate trumpet, same shape, let's have a listen. A jelly trumpet, made out of just normal jelly that you can have at home, but in 4 times the recommended concentration to make it nice and firm. We've got our mouthpiece stuck in the edge. Almost the same! The final trumpet that I want to show you is an ice trumpet. It's actually very, very beautiful. Starting to melt in my hands. Okay, have a listen to this. It's the same sound, it's amazing. So all of those different materials were able to make trumpets that sound exactly the same. So it kind of proves, maybe not great for material scientists, that in the case of trumpets, the material itself doesn't actually matter. It's the shape of the air inside that is vibrating and producing that sound. Today we make trumpets out of brass, but throughout history trumpets have been made out of all sorts of different materials. In ancient history, people made trumpets out of conch shells and wood, anything that came to hand in the natural world and that you could blow down that would make a sound would constitute an early trumpet. When metal workers started to get involved, the earliest trumpets would have been made out of the metals that we could find in nature. So that means metals like gold and silver, stuff that existed that we could find and beat into the shape of a trumpet. Tutankhamun was found with 2 ceremonial trumpets in his tomb. These were made out of gold and silver, and they're very, very beautiful instruments. In those days, trumpets were mostly used for military purposes to instruct soldiers out on the battlefield. And this tradition of the military element of trumpet playing has remained throughout the centuries. In the Bronze Age, we started to make trumpets out of bronze. This was an alloy of copper and tin, and it was much more durable than the softer metals of gold and silver that preceded it. After that point, with the invention of brass, trumpets start to be made out of that material. Brass is a lovely material for instruments. It's what's called a sonorous material. It helps to support the vibrations in the air inside the instrument. So if you ever see like cymbals on a drum kit, those are made of brass as well. The addition of valves like this on the trumpet came about at the same time as the invention of the steam engine, because the same metallurgical technology was required to precision engineer these sorts of very tight-fitting metal valves. And valves like this exist in engines like steam engines, and so the trumpet evolved alongside other sorts of engineering. And what this does is it changes the length of the instrument. And with different combinations of these, as well as different harmonics available to the trumpet player, we can play all of the notes that a piano can play, but with just 3 buttons. So then brass is a material that has been particularly close to my heart through my life playing the trumpet. And the stories that it can tell are everything from the physics of music to the history of metallurgy. I hope that after you've seen this, you'll be able to start recognising the stories that materials tell in your own lives too.